Alrighty, well, let's get started then. Wanted to thank you for joining us for this month's monthly ramp up presented to you by Franchise Ramp. My name is Nathan Hall, and I'm one of your account managers here. And I'm super excited for this latest edition of this webinar series that includes a mix of in the trenches knowledge and high level strategy, along with a featured interview with a franchisee. Today, we have our very own Peter Hansen, Franchise Ramp co-founder and multi-unit Club Pilates franchisee, sharing his franchising story, and our awesome franchisee success manager, Evan Lacivita. We'll conduct that interview later after my presentation. Before we get to hear from Peter and Evan, I'll be doing a deep dive into Facebook's audiences and how to generate higher intent leads. Don't forget, if you have any questions as I'm talking, please feel free to use the chat function, and we'll be sure to address those at the end of the webinar. And here we have our good little headshots. And here we go. Facebook audience deep dive on generating higher intent leads. So taking full advantage of Facebook's targeting with ad and creative copy, there's going to be a few things we need to talk about. First, the types of audiences that we use, and then how we align those audiences with correct copy and creative that'll speak better to them. Before we get started, here's a little interesting fact about myself. My family owns a baseball that's signed by Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. It's a cool little family heirloom. And the picture there is from our booth at the Expo convention. Hopefully we got to meet some of you guys there. It was a great time getting to see all of you. So when we're talking about the copy and creative being used and the audience that we're targeting, there's a few levers that we can pull to make an impact. That goes from what we see on screen: creative, copy, audience, offer, landing page, and lead form, and the amount being spent. So say that we're running into a problem with an audience not clicking on an ad and going to the lead form and submitting. There's a few levers we can pull to help solve that problem. Maybe the click-through rate, the amount of times people are clicking on that ad, isn't doing well. Well, we can tweak the copy, or we can tweak the creative, try to increase that interest. Or maybe we've seen that type of copy and creative do well in the past with that audience, but the offer had just changed. Well, we can do some things with the offer, maybe change the offer to try to go back to something that's worked previously. Just a few little tips and tricks that we can do there as an advertiser. That's for any advertiser in the world. They can pull these levers to make those changes. So with that said, when we pull those levers, here are a few of the trench tactics that we can use to initially get this a campaign started and get those higher intent leads brought in. First, we need to talk about the types of audiences being used. So what we have is the broad qualified audience. And what this audience is something very general. So let's use myself for example. I live in Arizona. I'm in my 20s. I'm a male and I speak English. If there is, say, a campaign with that audience of just a male from the age 20 to say 50 for, let's say, Cycle Bar, who speaks English and is within my area in Phoenix, I could get fed that ad. So that's just a broad qualified ad. If you fall within that kind of category of that audience, you can be served that ad. Now, there's also lookalikes, and the name really suggests what it is. A lookalike can be maybe one of your members on your Facebook page or a follower. It could be somebody who engages with your content, or it could even be a customer that you have in studio. So we can take data from Facebook and we can take data from your own studio that you provide to us and make an audience that looks like a person from that set of data. Say that the broad audience that we were just talking about, using myself as an example, say that, hey, this broad audience, that in that broad audience, Nathan's a really good responder to this ad and this offer. I want to make a lookalike to get other people who look like him because we're having good success with them. And we can take that data, pull those levers, and get those results. And there's also something that's a little more in the weeds, the interest qualified. And what we see here on the slide is it's about detailing the audiences. So for example, one thing that we like to play around with is, what's this person interested in? Say that I'm looking at a yoga studio. I'm working with Yoga 6. And we want to get an audience that's going to respond well to their interests. We'll use yoga-based interests within Facebook to say, hey, rather than just having that broad audience, give it to anybody who fits that category. they can fit that broad category, but have to have these interests, one of these interests. And that could be interest in yoga, interest in health and wellness, or mindful activities, something along those lines that Facebook gives us the access to target with. But it's not just interests, it can be behaviors such as what's known as an engaged shopper. That's somebody who has clicked on the shop icon on a Facebook ad within the past, I believe it's 30 days. So you know this person's interested on Facebook and is interested in shopping and has an intent to buy something. So we can target based off of that. So it's not just what somebody's interest is or their general demographics. You can do it based off of a few behaviors they have as well. Now, when we take that in mind, this is how we're going to set up the campaign. We have a few levers here we can pull as well. You have on the left-hand side here, you have the lead generation campaign. When we're building a campaign here, we want to get the leads in for you guys so you can go out and contact them. Once we have that selected, we pick the geography, say your studio, and we'll use my area, for example. You're in Phoenix, you're by ASU's campus, you can play around with the geo there. I don't want to target this zip code because it's student housing, what have you. And then you have the demographics like we just talked about with that interest. You can say, hey, are they interested in this? Maybe that you want college educated, something along those lines. Are they in a relationship? Are they a parent? Stuff like that. And then you can go into the feeds that you want to target on. So you can choose all these little levers to pull to target those audiences and go into detail or be more broad with what you want to do. So once we go through all that, we see how that's working. We have our ad. So here's a Pure Barre example. We have our primary text talking about come in and try a free Pure Barre class with us at our Pure Barre studio and learn the incredible benefits of our total body workouts yourself. And then we list out the characteristics and we have our creative. So when we're keeping that in mind with what we're doing with our audience themselves, what they're interested in, and we're crafting this ad for them, we put it all together within the ad itself. With our primary text, we make sure it speaks to them. With the creative, we want it to reflect with who they are. And this is the anatomy, as we see here, of the Facebook ad itself. And you ask that question with the headline, try Pure Barre for free. And say somebody's like interested in trying a new workout. We hit them with an interest along those lines. Yeah, I want to try a new workout. Barre sounds good to me. That woman looks like me. I'm going to go try a barre workout for free, and really speaking to them that way. Now, we're going to go into some more in-depth details on just specific case studies on this working and how this has worked out in the past. So here we have a stretch lab example. As we can see on the right-hand side here, we have our creative. As you can see, they're going to be older men that are interested in golf. Now, if we look here on the left-hand side with audience, our demographic is men aged 50 plus. And then we have their interest as golf and their behavior as an engaged shopper. Think back to the beginning of the presentation, what I was just talking about. We can target their interest, we can target their behavior, and we can target their broad demographic as well. Or we can get in more nitty gritty. This is a good nitty gritty example. Men 50 plus interested in golf who are engaged in shopping on Facebook. So we have this here. It's a 5-mile radius around the local Stretch Lab studio. And we have copy built specifically to target this demographic, this interest, and this behavior. And that gets back to the original point of this presentation, how to get those higher intent leads. So clearly these men want to be better at golf. Well, Stretch Lab can help assist in that. You can get those stretches in, help your performance on the golf course so you can one up your friends on the next hole. So here, back to another Pure Barre example. This one's a little bit more in detail because we have a demographic of women aged 35 plus, and their relationship is they have kids 18 or younger. So you have your moms who want to get away, go get a good workout in, and they're interested in healthy living. So we're going to be delivering this ad to women who have children 18 and younger. They're interested in healthy living, and they have a broad behavior. They're not interested in upcoming events. They're not necessarily an engaged shopper. It can be anybody or those two aforementioned behaviors. And we can see here, you try to keep that creative to women who they can look at the ad and say, hey, that looks like me. I can see myself doing that plank there at Pure Barre and really feeling that burn in that class. And here we can get really local with it too. Now we've talked about nitty gritty. Now let's go even further. In this location here at this Pure Barre studio, They said, hey, we have a university really close to our campus and our studio. We want to target them. They're back to campus. Can we do that? Yes, we can. We can take a good age range of women who would be in college, 18 to 25, and get a ad campaign directly to them. Now, thankfully, Facebook allows us to target based off of interest around education. And we have that interest of a bachelor's degree, whether they're currently obtaining a bachelor's degree or they're interested in it. Within that range, we can target these women. And a good behavioral interest for this one is interested in upcoming events. They're back on campus. They're home from the holidays. They're back from home from the holidays. They're ready to make some friends and get back in the swing of things on campus. Now, that speaks to them. We said, hey, welcome back to campus. We want you to come into our Pure Barre studio because we missed you. Now, we could have, if we go back here, one of these two creative, but that doesn't really truly speak to that audience we're trying to target. So we went into this studio's own organic Instagram creative library and took a couple of images that spoke to that specific audience and that specific studio's area. And we saw really good success with this because we were saying, listen, we know you're back from campus. We know you want to get back into an interested, because you're interested in an upcoming event. Here is a deal really catered towards you. Now, what does this truly mean for you? Well, you can cut out demographics that are unlikely to convert, keeping that in mind, that higher intent. And when you do this, you can really focus in on that prime customer avatar that you're working with within your area. Because sometimes maybe a broad audience doesn't work for you. You're not getting good results on it. But you know for a fact, if we go back to the stretch example, there's a golf tournament coming into town, or there's a golf tournament that's local a lot of the time, since you want people who are local to you. You can target those people and say, hey, we can help increase your productivity on the golf course. Come in and try a discounted intro stretch. And maybe you can get some good results from that because you actually are crafting a message that has a really good value proposition to somebody who might be really interested. Now, what can you specifically do to help yourself with this targeting these higher intent leads with these audiences and creative? Well, as we saw from the previous example, local creative can really help a lot. And knowing what's going on in your community and communicating that clearly with your customer avatar and then your franchise success manager can really help you out with having good results and good turnaround. Like we saw in that Pure Barre example, that local university, the students were back on campus, back from the holidays, and they were ready to go out and have some fun with their friends and try something new. So the best way to do that, to recap that, is cut out demographics that you know won't convert in your area from your own experiences in your studio. Focus on the customer avatars that you've had success with in the past and communicate that clearly to your success manager and give them the tools such as photos to really connect with that customer avatar. So with that said, I'm going to hand this over to Evan and Peter so they can have their little discussion about Peter's story with his own Club Pilates studio. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. Excellent. Yeah, we love that local, authentic creative. So keep that in mind. And yeah, today our very special guest is Peter Hansen, as Nathan mentioned, and I'm sure most of you know, Peter is a co-founder of Franchise Ramp and a successful franchisee himself. You may have heard his story, but for those of you who haven't, it's a good one. Peter, welcome. Thank you for carving out some time for us today. Always a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat and gain some insight from you. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited, Evan. Katie said they couldn't find anyone else, so I was the choice B or C or D.
No way.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, hey, let's. I know we got some questions here, but what? I'm not as familiar with all the names on the call, so could we do like a chat if people can throw their brands in there and kind of what how many locations they have? That would be helpful to maybe tailor some of my answers that way.
Yeah, absolutely. While everybody's doing that, Pete, why don't you kick things off the way we usually do and just tell us how long have you been in franchising and what was your story of how you got into it?
Yeah, I have a pretty entrepreneurial background. I grew up, selling raspberries on the side of the road for my dad's little kind of farm, if you will. Designed websites, was always a tech guy for the family. And so I always knew I wanted to get into business. My family, parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents always owned their own businesses. And so I sort of was raised in that entrepreneurial spirit. And so about 9 years ago, I was working at Ernst & Young, which is a professional services firm, and was on an airplane going to an engagement in Tampa, and was sitting next to a Liberty Tax franchisee. Didn't even get his name, but was just fascinated with franchising, didn't know anything about it, didn't know anything about Liberty Tax, but was just fascinated and talked to him nonstop for about 2 hours. He wasn't the sort of person that was just like forthcoming with answers or very forthcoming with answers, but not like, talking a lot or just divulging all sorts of information. And so I ended up showing up at Discovery Day like a month later, never got his name, never got his phone number, and he was there. And you could see his jaw drop because I'm like, I'm going all in, man. I'm quitting my job. I'm going to do this. And you could just sort of see his jaw drop like he was now responsible for me to succeed in franchising. And so pretty fortuitous relationship. He ended up being one of the probably the top or number 2 franchisee within the Liberty system. I think he had like 15 units and just a really good guy, and is in a number of different franchises now. And so he sort of helped me along and mentored me. And I did Liberty Tax about 6-7 years. We sold our 5 locations in 2019. And then kind of halfway through that, we got into Club Pilates because we were looking to diversify a little bit. We sort of realized 2, 3, 4 years into Liberty Tax that maybe we were in the wrong car. We were going the right way, but just in the wrong car. We had some industry regulation coming. The growth of the industry was slowing a bit. And so we were looking for something else. And we just absolutely fell in love with Club Pilates. I think what we fell in love with was it created a new product, it created a new category. Like there'd been some Orange Theory and there'd been some boutique fitness, but this was like a new category of like accessible Pilates. Pilates before had never been accessible for the masses. And so it created a new category. We like the hard product, like walking into a Club Pilates studio is just really fantastic. It's warm and welcoming. There's significant barriers to entry in the Pilates space. You can't just, start doing Pilates, reformer Pilates without, a couple $100,000 in equipment. And the demographic was relatively unserved. We didn't know that at the time, but it is pretty underserved market, maybe less so now, but 4 or 5 years ago when we started, it was less served. And so we're at 11 units now, 8 in Arizona, 3 in Ohio. And looking to get to 35 in the next 5 years. I guess the main reason that I really like it now and the sort of transition to Liberty Tax is this idea of, no one ever told me in the tax business that this tax return changed my life, but it happens all the time, daily, weekly at our Club Pilates. Our members will say this changed our life or my life. I can now get on the ground, crawl with my kids, crawl with my grandkids. My back pain is healed. This feels like my wonderful space where I could be me and do something for myself when the rest of the time I'm doing stuff for everyone else. And it's made me more centered. Like the testimonials just go on and on and on. And so that's a great feeling to be able to have a business that has that sort of impact on others. And so that's why we're trying to get to 35 locations in the next 5 years. I spend most of my time, I have a really good team. I have a sort of an operating partner district manager in Ohio, and then I have a district manager in Arizona, really more like a VP of operations in Arizona, and then 2 district managers in Arizona that do pretty much all the day-to-day. I'll do some, I'm more focused on raising capital, debt, acquisitions, big picture, and just trying to stay out of my team's way.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've established quite an organization there and have a pretty big goal too. But I like what you said about the being in the kind of the right vertical, right, and having some passion about the service that you're providing, and the impact that you're having as a business owner. We got a bunch of folks who responded saying that they're in the boutique fitness industry. So Club Pilates, Pure Barre, Stretch Lab. We got Yoga 6 and Row House, and I think that might dovetail into the next question, which is, Peter, talk to us about some recent achievements, right? We're in the month of January. But other than that, what do you think some of the biggest contributors are to your recent successes?
Yeah. Yeah, just a quick aside. January, we're seeing a little bit of softness in our numbers, but not anything concerning. January is not typically our strongest month for us. Usually it's February, March. People kind of get back in the swing of things, start thinking about it in January, and then take the plunge in February, March. But yeah, since the pandemic, we're at 115% of pre-pandemic revenue. Our Queen Creek studio in Arizona was number 9 in December, and East Mesa was number 11. Our lowest ranked studio is in the top 50%. Maybe that this month it might drop a little bit. And so, we've been really fortunate to be in a good vehicle and have a really, really good team. And I think people now more than ever, it can be a little scary, I think, for people to go out into public and to be breathing around people. But I think that people are starting to realize that the trade-off is worth it, right? Because we need to be healthy to combat sickness and illness. And the best way to be healthy is to move and not just move, but to get to mindfulness, which is one of the things that we offer at Club Pilates.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed, the worst of it's behind us, but oh my goodness, you never know. I guess keep talking about differentiators, right? Pete, you're high performing, you're really successful, and you've got some big goals. You've got, like we mentioned, a pretty stable organization, co-founder of Franchise Ramp. What do you think set you apart?
I think we're pretty rigorous in people, the people component of our business. People are a product at Club Pilates. We have a great hard product. We have a great, studio, but at the end of the day, people come because of our sales, and they stay because of the amazing experience they receive from our instructors and from our front desk staff and from our managers. And so people are a product. We don't make widgets. We don't sell real estate. We don't, people are a product. And so we're just really, really passionate about that idea, that our people are a product, and we want the absolute best people if they're going to be our product. And so a lot of, maybe some of our conversation as we continue here, I'm going to be referencing, some EOS items. If you haven't read the EOS book, Traction, I'm a big believer in that. We use Traction as our operating system at Franchise Ramp and at our Club Pilates, both entities in Arizona and Ohio. And they talk about this people component of having the right people in the right seat at the right time. And so right people is do they fit our core values? Are they positive, enthusiastic? Do they support their community and team? And do they have a grow or die mentality where they realize that if they're not growing, then they're slowly dying. And so that's, we're not perfect. We have 90 people in our Club Pilates, and so we're young, and so that means you can't have 100% of people that our core value fits, but we're just always thinking about it, always talking about our core values, and rewarding for our core values, and recognizing and hiring for them. We have interview questions to kind of get to those core values. We're looking for those core values, and then we fire if we make a mistake and realize that we don't have the core value fit. The second piece of that is right seat. So does the person do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? I sort of like some people just don't get that their job is to be a Yoga 6 instructor, not a yoga instructor. There's a very specific format with Yoga 6, just like with Club Pilates. Like, some of our instructors forget that's about being a Club Pilates instructor, or they don't get it, not being a Pilates instructor. And so that's the example I like to use to get it. Do people understand what the job entails? Want it? Do they want it? Oftentimes people want to become a manager, but they don't really want the work it entails. They just want the positional power, if you will, or the money, but they don't really want or wake up every day wanting to do that job. And then capacity, are they good at what they do? Emotional intelligence, skills, knowledge, etc. So we rate everyone quarterly. We don't share that rating with everyone quarterly because no one wants to be rated quarterly, right? Like, there's a lot of pressure around that annual or around those performance reviews, but we do it just to keep a pulse to really understand where we are as a business and where we need to grow, where we need to, make changes. And so we use it quarterly. Quarterly, though, we do talk with everyone, every single individual. We call them our quarterly conversations, and we talk about, we get feedback. That's the main thing. Like we're trying to get feedback from our people, and have that, sort of more informal conversation about what's working, what's not, how can we help them. And then we'll provide a little feedback as well. But primarily the goal is to get feedback from our people, so that we can be better and improve. So yeah, that's just, I think the 115% is because we've just been really focused on that idea of like, do we have the right people? Do we have the right people? And I'm pushing my people to ask, like, are you sure this person is positive, enthusiastic, right? That's one of our core values. Are you sure that they really get the job, and asking those questions and being consistent with them? So yeah. So I think that's a big thing. I think we have a pretty good culture because everything revolves around those core values. And so, for instance, we have a lot of member support specialists, which we call them we call our sales reps member support specialists. And a lot of them become instructors because they just love the community. They see the impact. Our current instructors encourage them the MSSs to become instructors and are supportive of them. So I think having those strong employees and strong community, I think, is big. Throughout the pandemic, we offered 45 virtual classes a week. We had a Facebook group that was really engaged, and 66% of our members paid us the entire time. And before that, we were a little bit fortuitous and lucky, and our focus for the year before was like, how do we create a massive movement? Ed Milet is kind of like a motivational speaker, and he has this great podcast titled like How to Create a Massive Movement. And so that was really our focus for all of 2019. And it's kind of continued since then, is this idea of like, how do we get so many people, or how do we get everyone in our community, our local community, not just our members, just fired up about Club Pilates and what we bring to the community, the health impact, the financial impact, the relational impact for all of our members and community members. And so I think, we've been pretty fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, Pete, that's awesome. There was a lot there. I want to unpack a little bit of it. We could probably talk for hours about some of the things that you just mentioned, but it seemed like core to all of it was people, right? You said people is the product. You're serving people, and you have people that are doing that work. You also mentioned EOS, which is, for those who are not familiar, kind of the framework that you're using to implement this idea of being people-focused and people-centric. Is there, you also mentioned core values. What was the process of developing those core values? Because it seemed like that was central to a lot of the right fit component of it.
Yeah, I'm not an expert at that, and it's been a while since we've done that. We look at our core values every quarter as a leadership team, just more cursory, as kind of quick questioning ourselves. Annually, we look at them in more detail, but I'm a little bit removed from when we set them, at Club Pilates 3-4 years ago, and a franchise ramp 3 years ago. But really, it's the best exercise I've ever seen to figure out your core value. It's tough to set your core values when like your company's 6 weeks old, right? And so as the lead company, though, it is helpful to come with these sort of almost personal core values that you want your business to exhibit. They'll evolve over time, just like a toddler evolves over time and becomes a teenager or preteen, teenager, adult, right? So your first core values probably won't fully match your ending core values. And so you're going to have to come with your own personal ones if you're just starting. Let's say you have 2-3 studios, though, or more. Really useful exercises to say to your leadership team. It starts with the leadership team. Is to say who's our best employee here, and they'll say Jen, and then you just go through the list of why is Jen our best employee. And what you're really pulling out there are values. What sort of characteristics, not necessarily skills, but what sort of characteristics or values make Jen so great? And then you go to the second person that's your number 2 person, right? Either instructor, sales rep, or manager, and you list all their traits, and you start to see some of the commonalities there. But yeah, there's much more detail, but that's sort of helpful if you're, yourself. You got to kind of do it yourself, and then socialize that concept with your team. When I was at Liberty Tax, I did a slightly different culture sort of core values exercise. And I was driving it pretty much the entire time. Like there wasn't much buy-in from the team, whereas at Club Pilates and Franchise Ramp, when we first did it, we did a good job of getting significant buy-in and making our people feel like, the values came from them and they really do resonate with them. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? There's a place where you have to start, and then you kind of iterate and evolve over time. But yeah, it sounds like it is central to a lot of the decisions that are being made along with the EOS framework.
Yeah, and I always thought, I remember, maybe this is when I was a little bit naive and pessimistic about the world when I was younger in corporate America, but I never got the core values, and the mission statement. They always seemed sort of empty to me. And maybe they were empty at the organizations, that I was at.
Sure.
But I've just seen it at Club Pilates and at Franchise Ramp, even the impact that core values that are used, have on an organization. You can't just have them if you don't use them for all the things we mentioned before.
Yeah. Well, Pete, this is, like I said, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. I want to be sensitive to your time and everybody else's. Got to ask, what advice would you give franchisees that are just starting out, right? We've got some folks that are new, and even if you're in your first week or your first couple of years, still probably some advice that they could glean from Mr. Peter Hansen.
Yeah. What time do we have till, Evan?
I think we're coming up on time or overtime. I think we're slated for a tight 30 today.
Okay, sounds good. I think two pieces. I think if you're just starting out, or even if you've been doing this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, even me, I try to talk to other high performing Zs as much as possible, picking their brains about different ideas, asking them what they're doing new this month, what they're doing differently. That's, follow the system. Like we follow our system 95% of the Club Pilates system, right? Like we follow it 95 to 99%, which I think is better than most franchisees. We do use EOS as sort of our operating system around the fringe, to sort of more of a management tool for communication, et cetera. Yeah, talk to other franchisees, because that's where you're going to get the ideas. And I think I said this on a call before. Franchising is about getting the right combination to the lock. You can have 9 out of 10. But only be getting a C on your exam. Whereas if you get that 10th combination, you have all the combinations, you go from a C to an A plus, and you have a lot more success. So, every day, can you be talking to a franchisee or reading something that gives you an extra idea to help you unlock that lock? And the digits are different for everyone because we all come from different backgrounds. The other thing I would say is that that's really applicable whether or not it's really applicable whether you have one store open or not even unopened, or you have 11 stores like me, is this idea of like setting a foreseeable future for your people and for everyone in the organization. So EOS has this vision component where you can sort of chart your vision out, but using that all the time and saying, hey, we're going to have 35 stores in 10 years. And in 3 years, here's what it's going to look like, and painting that picture for people, and then saying what's in it for them. Right. So John Maxwell is a big leadership consultant, and his level 1 is you're a leader because you're in positional power. The second level is you have relationships with your team. The third level is you've had success before, so people are going to follow you in. And the fourth level, there's 5 levels, but the fourth level is people follow you because of what you will do for them. And so if you can paint a foreseeable vision and picture of where what the company is going to do for them, they're going to follow you anywhere. And so painting that picture of what that foreseeable future of the company means for them. So if you're a front desk rep, hey, we're going to be growing to 3 stores, so I'm going to need another studio manager. If you're a studio manager, hey, I'm going to be growing, I'm going to need a district manager. If you're at our spot, hey, I'm going to need a VP of operations, or I'm going to need a 3rd district manager. And so painting that foreseeable future for everyone, even if you only own 1 store and that is your vision, that you only want to own 1 store, how can you create enough opportunity within that 1 store for everyone to feel like there's growth opportunities there? It's just been really powerful. I learned that from John Hewitt which is the Liberty Tax, and Jackson Hewitt co-founder. He opened 9,000 Liberty Tax locations, or 9,000 tax prep locations between those two brands in over like 30 years. And that was the biggest thing I got from him, was this idea of like everyone has a foreseeable future in your organization.
Nice. Okay. So talk to other franchisees and think about the futures of all the folks that you're working with. But yeah, it seems like there was a theme, Peter, throughout the whole thing that was very people centric. My last question, my bonus question, I know you're a big reader. Can you give us some book recommendations?
You know, I read I see Bryce is on. I read a book recently, did a book group on it called the Go-Giver. And there's 4 books in the series, but The Go-Giver is the original and by far the best. And that's been pretty transformational in my thought process of being a business owner and just being a citizen of society. So yeah, The Go-Giver. I've been doing a lot of reading on crypto and Web3 and NFTs. That's just sort of where nothing really related to franchising, nothing related to franchise ramp, but I'm just it interests me a lot, so I've been spending a lot of time there as well.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, and I know that in the past you've recommended The Coaching Habit, and some of us are reading that currently. That's another one that I'll throw out there.
Yeah. We're doing a book study for that at Franchise Ramp, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Now, I joked with Aaron that he knows all my secret questions now. The Coaching Habit kind of gives you 7 questions of how to coach your team instead of directing them, but how to coach them. It's a really good book too.
Yeah, I don't think it would have worked for this interview. I don't think I could have started with what's on your mind. Maybe that wouldn't have been the right place to take it, but yeah, excellent. Peter, anything else that you can think of that we didn't touch on yet that you want to leave folks with?
No, I think those last 2 things: set a foreseeable future for your team, talk to as many people as possible. Yeah. I'm actually not that busy. You know, if anyone ever wants to chat, send me an email and we can get something scheduled, or you know, my assistant will just reply with my cell phone. You can give me a call, and I'd love to talk to franchisees. So
cool. Yeah, I think initially we were slated for 30, but I don't know. It seems like we're all free. We could go another couple minutes. There is a question.
Sure.
Looks like we're getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty here from Dawn, who mentioned that she's with Pure Bar, and she's asking about pay structure and cost structure, and asking how that, I guess, that works.
Is that a question for like me, or is that a question for Franchise Ramp, or like what?
Maybe we can touch on that in just kind of broad strokes, you know, without getting into specifics, right? It's a little bit of a math question, but I don't know, when you think about your businesses in those terms, what's your approach?
You know, since people are our product, our biggest expense and biggest investment is wages. I learned the hard way my first year at Liberty. I lost like 15 grand, primarily because our payroll was just super inflated and bloated. And so that's your biggest variable payroll expense. You can save some costs in other areas, but oftentimes, you know, like it just doesn't have much impact, and really your time isn't spent the best there. So are your payroll costs in control for the revenue that you're bringing in? But more importantly, do you have the right people in the right seats that are driving revenue for you, in the salespeople that are you know, the front facing, and then the instructors that provide the great experience to get people to stay. And then, so that's how I think about pay structure. So we monitor pay like weekly. We do bi-weekly payroll, but we get weekly payroll reports to understand if we're over or under budget. You know, it's a little bit hard to adjust by canceling or moving classes, but at least just give us a healthy pulse. That's another thing I didn't touch on is scorecard. So we use data pretty extensively. We don't just read the iKismet or Club Ready reports. Like, we have our team take those, put them into our own scorecards, so on a weekly basis we can track how we're doing. I'm a big believer that, like, you know, people don't process data in their heads and think about it until they look at it, write it down. So we have the scorecard. We also have a scoreboard that we have on the front desk of every computer and in the back of every studio on a tablet that shows our performance month to date and year to date with our revenue goals for each studio. And so yeah, and then my district managers are all incented. Those three are all incented. Their sole incentive is a profit share. So do it a couple of different ways. If you're ever interested in doing a profit share, I'm a big fan of Profit Works. It's a book sort of in the Traction series. And it just talks about profit threshold, the concept of profit threshold. And so they're in alignment. And I've just started doing that about a year ago, and that's probably been one of the most impactful things on my business, because people feel empowered and trusted when they know what the numbers are, and they really start to treat the business like their own, because they're going to be able to control their income pretty explicitly. I like to tell a story of how my district manager, one of them, when I first was telling her about this, I'd been, for the last probably 3 months, 6 months before that, I've been kind of like, can we go from like cleaning 3 nights a week, like paying these cleaners 3 nights a week, to 2 nights a week? Just not all the time, but and I trust her. Like, if that's what we need, that's what we need to be successful. I'm not there. I don't live in Arizona. I don't live in Ohio. And then right when we did this profit share thing, she went down to 2 days a week at a few of the locations. And it was like, we can get a better return on our investment, right? We'll have some front desk staff, maybe reset some expectations around that. And instead of paying someone an extra $150 a week, we can pay someone $15 a week. So it was, and that's just one small example, right? But, our district managers are all thinking in that idea of like, if I'm going to spend this, am I going to get a positive return on it? And yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds like refinement there. And you're looking for every little win. They all add up. Concept from another book, Atomic Habits, actually. And you were talking about scorecards, and that's mentioned in that book as well. Yeah, maybe you should start your own book podcast, Peter. I think that's it. No other questions materializing here, but Peter, thank you again. I certainly appreciate you taking the time out. Like I said, always really insightful to hear what you've got going on and things you've learned along the way.
Yeah, and the offer's always there. Like I said, I'm not that busy, so send me an email, and I'd be more than happy to set up time to chat, or just get you my cell, and we can connect that way.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to pass the mic back to Nathan.
Alrighty. I want to thank everybody for coming to this month's edition of the monthly ramp up. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the chat interaction. This has been a really good one. And I want to say thank you to Evan and Peter for having this awesome dialogue. I actually took a couple notes. I was pretty much glued here, and I was like, let me stop slouching forward because I'm sitting here looking. But yeah, if anybody has any questions at all, you know where to find us. Like Peter said, shoot us an email. We'd be happy to get in touch with you. But with that said, thank you everybody for coming out, and hopefully you can use some of the lessons from today in your day-to-day.